Hello there, babe. It's nice for you to see me. Even though I can't see you, I still take great pride and great pleasure in the thought of you watching me. It makes me so happy, makes me the happiest man on the planet. This video is a few things. One, it is the story of my life. But the others are a few surprises. So it's not all about my life story. There's a few other things. I'm going to talk about something else as well, and that's part of the surprise. So you'll have to wait until that specific part of the video. Like I said, this video will be broken up into different parts. Even though I could film all of it in one setting, that would be good. I could just upload it from there, but that would mean that it would take me a long time without messaging you as well, and also you won't be able to start watching until I actually begin. So now that you know, and I've told you that, in a sense, of not too long ago, but an hour ago, that it'll be broken up into sections. I just wanted to reiterate, just go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, how many ever it may be. Also, the story will be uploaded before sunrise here. But there may be a few parts at the end where I will upload later. So there will be a few intervals. So think of the story as the first big part of the video, and then maybe a break. Even when you've watched it, you might wait a little while longer for the next few parts because I'll take a break. But also, I'll get a bit of time to film those parts as well. So you'll have it all in no time, babe. I promise this will be fully done, and you will hopefully enjoy it. Sorry, my nose is itchy. Sorry about that. Firstly, if for some reason Eileen is showing this to any of her family, I apologize for scratching my nose. It's not exactly polite to do it. And hello, hello, hello there. It's nice to see you, even though I can't. I still say hello. But it's up to Eileen if you want to show this to any of your family. Of course, this is all for you, babe, and it's for you to do what you wish. If you want to keep this between you and me, that's fine. If you want to share it with people, your family and your friends, that's perfectly okay. Do what you wish. I wouldn't show anybody unless I would tell you first, and the only people would be my father or mother, or maybe a friend, and it wouldn't be the whole video. It would be sections of it, like the least kind of embarrassing to show my parents' parts, where I'm talking about maybe certain things that I wouldn't want my mum to watch, like if I say cringy things or embarrassing things, like embarrassing if I had my mother hearing it, if that makes sense. But I really, really hope my life story is interesting. At the very, very least, you will, even if it's not interesting, even if it's boring, at the very least, you will have, first of all, a recording of me talking about my life story and how I got here. And also, if you needed to So you could refer back to it if you wanted to remember something that I told you about myself, or you just wanted to refresh your memory about a certain aspect. But also, you will always know then. You will always know about my past because I would have told you anyway if it was through different hundreds of talks throughout the years about certain parts, and we've talked about certain things. So you already know stuff about me, but I'm still going to talk about that in the video. So I'm not going to leave anything out apart from the very negative things, babe. I want this video to be as positive as it can be. Now, when it comes to the bad things, you still have every right to know, and I've told you most of them, pretty much everything. Yeah, yeah, so I will, I will touch on them. What I won't do is bring up the current situation. I won't do that because I don't want this video to be about that. That will be it. That'll be the first and last time I mention it in this video because I don't want to think about it at this moment. I just want to think of me and you, babe. Me and you are the future. But also I will have a nice sweet talk at the end to you about that. I'm very happy to do this. I don't know why. Maybe it's a bit of ego in me to talk about myself, but a part of it's probably because I've talked about myself to numerous kind of therapists and things throughout the years, so, and doctors and things. So this is very easy because in terms of what I've told people, and like if I told a story to someone, a joke, or like this would have been my most ever told video, story, my life story. Like, it's very easy to remember. You just remember what happened, and there's lots of things I remember. I will leave out tiny pointless details, like for example, one time I found a £20 note, 20, like, so it's paper money. I found it beside this kind of phone electrical tiny box, and I got a water pistol with it. But weirdly enough, I in the exact same place. I don't know if it was before or after that. I actually found a fiver, a £5 note. However, the £5 note was fake. It was deliberately fake. So it wasn't meant to be that this is real money. So it wasn't counterfeit. It wasn't illegally made. So it was just one of those fun notes that weren't to be used intentionally for money. It was just for, like a joke thing. But weirdly enough, at the exact same place, like the same place I found it, and it is quite out in the open. I found it, so it's strange, but there, the place I was growing up, I will touch on it, but the place I was growing up did deteriorate, but I will get into that, and you'll understand why. I'll mention it in the video, but you'll understand why there may have been drops of money hidden or not so hidden in places. But it'll be just a theory of mine. I have no concrete evidence to support it, but it's probably the theory I'll come up with is that I have came up with is probably the correct one or close enough. But apart from that, Well, I think we should get started, babe. So, 10 minutes in, I think it's a good time to start. My life journey begins on the 14th of July 1990. Stephen John Patrick Elliott was born at 25 past 11 at night. I know the time, babe, yes. And it was a Saturday. It was a glorious sunny Saturday, according to my mother. And yeah, so I know the time, the day it was. And yeah, so I think about myself a lot, I guess. So everything was good. I came out fine. And the start of my life was good. 6 weeks in, I I couldn't keep my milk down. I could just about get some milk in my stomach, but due to I can't even explain the kind of medical thing, but basically, in simplified terms, I couldn't intake milk or basically anything else, and the doctor came to see me and they said to my mother the very words, or close to it, that if you don't bring your son to a doctor, he will die. And very strong words, of course. And therefore, my mother brought me to the hospital, and I don't know the length of time it took me from getting to the hospital until things were sorted, but I uh, I had an operation, and I showed you before. It's on my stomach, so the problem must be to do with the stomach, I guess. But I should get the name of it. I was actually told by the doctor. Remember, I told you I talked to a doctor earlier for 25 minutes. I did refer about that because she was talking about another MRI scan, and I explained about how the like if I had any surgeries, and that's the only surgery I've had, and she told me the name of it because it just comes naturally to doctors. It's a long name, but I can't remember it. But I will look it up in the future because, like I mentioned, or children could have it, and I do not want to be unprepared. I want to be as prepared as humanly possible for our children to be born. From reading books to looking up online things that will help in raising children, I will do it because there is no other job important to me in life than being a parent. Being married to you and being a parent is all I care about. I may have hobbies, but that is all I care about. So in relation to the that condition, I will make sure. My dad had it, his twin brother had it, and I think another male member of my dad's family, but I'm not 100% sure. But I am 100% sure about my dad and his twin brother Robert. So so that's in it's genetic. And I don't, like my dad didn't know what to say. Like he wouldn't have thought about that at all when I had this problem. So I'm sure he mentioned it afterwards because it came to mind. I'm sure that it was the same problem, but of course, as a new parent, my dad's not going to immediately think about that. I'm I'm sure my both my parents were terrified, as I would be, as you would be. I can't imagine that horrible feeling of thinking you're going to lose your baby, or the possibility. And the way my mum is, she's a constant worrier. and that's fine. Like she's worries about me and she worries about all her stuff, but I she never mentioned it, but I can just imagine how absolutely terrified she would be, and I really feel for her back then. But yeah, I got through it. Uh, my my mother and father were saying there were after the operation. I was in one of the incubators to keep myself protected from infections, I believe, and my mother was out not outside the incubator, but she was like in the hallway looking into the room with incubators with different babies, and and my mother said that they were looking at me, and at one point or a few points that I looked at them, so I recognized them. I'm sure that would have been a very touchy moment for them, and I just thought that was cool. Like that I could recognize my parents at such a early age, but I that's it's nothing to do with my intelligence. It's more to do with humanity, and like I'm sure, as soon as you're born, you know exactly who your mother is. Like because you're spending so much time, and by what 6 weeks, like I'm sure I know who my mother and father was and what they looked like. But so like my problem was solved. Like my operation was completely successful, and there's nothing else for the next couple of years. So we'll skip ahead to maybe when I was four. One of I think it could be my earliest memory would be when I was 4 years old and I was at nursery. I have a couple of memories in nursery. I definitely do have them. There's one that I have a vague memory of seeing Santa Claus. I dressed up as Santa Claus on top of a building. I'm sure it was December. So it was something for the kids, you know, and they might call it something different in the Philippines. They call it kindergarten in America. Over here, they call it nursery. So it's basically preschool. It's school without being school because you're 4 years old. You don't want to be learning things. You want to play. So that's what it is for a whole year. So yeah, that's my earliest memory of being at nursery and seeing Santa Claus on top of a building and things. But yeah, that went fine. In what year would it be? In 1995, I completed nursery and I went into a school called Christ the King. So it is a religious school. Every school I went to was religious. I went to three schools, and they're all religious. Like Christian. So they have Christian practices like praying every morning and things, several times a day, in fact. But so you start off in P1, they call it. It's primary one, so that's your first year at school, and you last until primary seven. Over in America, England, you last to P6, and then you go to high school. But not over here. You go through 7 years of of primary school. So you're there from when you're 5 years old to when you're 11 or just turned 12, for example, depending on when you were born in the year. But I can't really remember. I can remember things about my first 34 years of primary school, but nothing particularly of note. In terms of my life outside of school, things were pretty good. Nice memories. Like when I was 7, I saw my first ever glimpse of a video game at my cousin's, and I remember it vividly, even the certain part of the game that was being played, I remembered, and I don't remember the specific feeling, but I remember being so amazed. Like this was incredible to me, and come on, what else? If I was about 7 years old, I was definitely seven because it came out in 1997. So you're talking about 25 years ago at the least, and ever since I'm a big video game player. But so I got a video game console that year because I absolutely begged my dad, and when we were passing the store, I was once again begging for the Nintendo 64, they called it, and I was shocked when he said okay, and I was just over the moon. I was whoa, delighted, and yeah, I have tons of memories. I know it's not important, so I won't talk about it. Like if someone was interested in video games and how it started for me, then I have hundreds, literally hundreds, if not over 1,000 different small stories and memories of video games because it is an important part of my life, hobby wise. Just as like people play sports or something like that, but yeah, like so. When I was 7, I was diagnosed with what is called ADHD. It stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, and it's all it means really is that the kid who's diagnosed with it shows signs of being disruptive. Maybe if they're in class, they can't stay still. Like without if they were trying to stay still while concentrating on something, they it would be very easy for the person to for the kid to wander off. If he was told to sit down, it'd be very difficult for him after a certain while because the kid would get bored or he would get distracted. So it'd be hard to concentrate as well. So it's, as it says in the name, attention. So it's about attention and it's about concentration and it's about being so hyper and all over the place that you want to play a lot as a kid. There is adults with ADHD. I think I might still have it, but I haven't been told I have. But yeah, so I can't say that I do have it, but I did, according to the person who diagnosed me. But so I was very disruptive, and I a lot of times in school I was not only disruptive to the class, I was downright scoundrel by hitting classmates. For example, one time with a chair, one of those small school chairs, when in the dining hall, and throwing rulers at another kid, messing with like a computer, because I was, like at that age, I was absolutely fascinated with technology. So that was my thing. And, like I really wanted to use a computer. And the school knew that. So they thought something that might help me would be they gave me a keyboard, like a computer keyboard. so I could, just play with. And I did. It was fun. It not only satisfied me then, but it probably and likely grew my interest in technology. And I think it was the principal that actually suggests that I do have a vague memory of being given it, and definitely around the time of being given it. But yeah, I one time bit a classmate called Conal in the arm, not like bare arm, but like probably on a shirt or something. But I still bit him, and it did break the skin, of course. I'm not Dracula, but his parents, his parents were rich. They're actually millionaires. I believe probably he's probably the richest person I've ever known, actually. But due to his parents being so rich, he's a decent fella. I knew him since when in high school, for example. But anyway, his parents weren't as reasonable because they were kind of asking for me to be expelled or thrown out of the school. And my principal was fair and he said no. He refused, and that was great. I had two principals in that school, Christ the King, and I don't know which one it was. There was Mackle and Mr. McNulty, and both were pretty good. The the school, were the ones that had to deal with my hyperactivity, and then I went to home, and then my parents dealt with it as well. So because of this, I went to a it's called a child and adolescent service called Rivendell, and what they do there is sort of like therapy. Weirdly enough, I actually don't remember much of the content itself, what I was asked, and the kind of methods they might have taught me because I don't remember. I think it was probably more asking me questions about what I was doing and maybe why, and I give feedback to them, and they would maybe tell my parents about what kind of direction to go in, like to deal with my problems. So it's just interesting. I never thought about that really until now. But yeah, Rivendell, I was there from when I was 7 until I was a month away from being 18. The reason I had to leave at 18 because it is a child and adolescent service. Once you're an adult, it's not their problem really. And the way that it kind of, looking back on it, the way I was taken off it was very premature and it was not dealt with properly. But I'm not resentful because I wasn't in a good place mentally at that time. So I didn't deal with it properly at all. Uh, and that was in 2008, a month before I turned 18. But anyway, back to when I was about 7. I don't know if it was 97 when I was 7 or 98 when I was 8. But either 7 or 8, I was put on medication to deal with my ADHD, my hyperactivity, with medication called Ritalin. So Ritalin is a medication to calm a child, or an adult can take them too, but it's to help them concentrate so they could not get distracted and be more obedient, like really. And it really did work. I was given a kind of extra help at school because they had a like a teaching assistant, and for the kids that were maybe disruptive or kind of needing that bit of extra help, they were either in class with me to help me and a couple of others that were in my class that needed same attention, and also to take me out of class but still work in the class to do the same work, only with less distractions, and like I could do my work, so it was a good idea. But the Ritalin, it really did work. Uh, and I got a bit of, like a bit of stick, and stick means over here, not an actual stick, but like it means a bit of joking about, like a bit of at someone else's expense. Like you're joking about someone. Like if I said to my dad, "You're bald," like, and he knew it was a joke, it would be a bit of stick, a bit of stick. So, like, so I was getting a bit of stick about the fact that I had to go out to the hallway to take my Ritalin medication 2 times or so a day, and like I felt a bit humiliated by it, and it was referenced all the way until high school because a lot of people in my primary school were also in my secondary school. So I met loads of people that were from my class because we stay the same class. It's not a huge school. There's probably a couple of hundred. So you know the same people for 7 years or maybe eight if you're in nursery together, and then you're in high school, so you know the same people for 7, 8 years, and then you know them even more. But I didn't care about the things said to me. I wasn't being bullied about it. It was just like a few friendly jokes here and there. But there was a huge downside to the Ritalin, and that was the fact that it did its job too well. And the best way to explain in a way how it affected me, or the consequences of how it affected me, is by telling you this short part of the story that my mother always tells me, and I always reference it to explain, like how much Ritalin affected me and the work, But I'll explain it now. My teachers were asking my mother, and this is some time after taking Ritalin, like months maybe went by. They were a bit worried because I was too quiet. So I was going from shouting in class and being extremely disruptive and mental to being completely reserved and a shut-in, like within the class. I didn't want to, like interact much. I remember feeling just a bit closed off, and it was definitely the Ritalin. It just didn't happen in a snap. It didn't happen overnight. It was the Ritalin, and the teachers did say that he's too quiet, and they were worried in case there was something maybe happened at home, the family life that might have changed the circumstances or something. But no, it was the Ritalin, and the fact that even the teachers were worried because I changed so much that it was like they wanted the old Stephen back, and I kind of wanted it back too, even though it was crazy. But I was taken off the Ritalin I think about a year or so after. It wasn't for too long. I would say around 9, uh, or maybe earlier, I was taken off it. Definitely not when I was about 10, so I wasn't on it then. Um, and there was no real medication afterwards. They probably assumed that medication was not going to be effective, or maybe they thought it was going to be too effective and they didn't. They would rather not have like me live with the consequences of like Ritalin and stuff. But in a way, I never. When I say never recovered, I don't mean like I was completely scarred for life or anything. But ever since then, I have been like the way I was. Only through the last 24 or so years since then, I've slowly came out of my shell and worked really hard on making a life that's a bit more normal. And it was really difficult, it really was, but I got to a good point and I moved on. I made a good effort and it worked. And I'm at this point now where I'm making this video for you, babe. And yeah, like, there's still a long way to go. You know what I'm like by now about going outside, and like, it's not going outside that I don't like, it's big crowds. Like, I love big open spaces, absolutely love it. I go for pleasant walks uh in big open spaces beside the river. I've told you about it before, it's lovely in the summer, but if there was a lot of people, like on a weekend in the summer, and a certain point in the day where there would be a lot of people, then I don't like it as much because there's too many cyclists going by, and then you have to move, and then there's people going past. Maybe they say hello, and you just feel, even though it's just common, I just feel a bit uncomfortable. It's just me. It's just the way I am, babe. But yeah, so I think Ritalin definitely accelerated things with my personality. Maybe I would have been like this anyway, but honestly, I don't know. I don't know if I would have been like this regardless, but yeah, I haven't really been like the hyperactive way since. There, it is kind of like a hybrid now of what I was uh, like, but it is a hybrid of what I was like between before Ritalin and after Ritalin. So, I've got this hyper side, and maybe if I got a few cups of tea, coffee, or caffeine, whatever, I get hyper. Or if I just get happy or a bit silly, I get hyper. And I love it. I love all it. It's just me, like, it's just the way I am. And yeah, like, however, I can still concentrate on work, and I can get stuff done if I need it, just like this video, if you can consider it an example. But if there was paperwork that needed to be done, I could do it. I uh, I am still an introvert. Before Ritalin, I was going out of the house as much as possible, going out playing. And when I say going out playing, I meant going out and causing chaos. uh, but I did it every day, and sometimes with friends, and a lot of the times I wanted to have more friends, and I did have some, and sometimes I was lonely, and but when after Ritalin, for example, I went out less, and as you'll know, I it gets kind of worse before it gets better. But yeah, so after Ritalin, and what so forget about Ritalin. That part's kind of done for now, at least in a way. I don't think there's going to come back, like, into the story, but it is a big part, I believe. So I don't know what year, but let's say halfway or more than halfway into my mother and father and me living in Oma. That's where I was born. I was born in the hospital in Oma, and we lived in a park called Lisnelly. And the way my mother tells it, it was a lovely place when she moved in. We moved in to house number 101, and it was a 3 bedroom, brilliant house, good neighbours. She got along with people. However, over time, something happened, and a lot of bad people moved in. Like, it just got progressively worse until the point there was drug dealers and like criminals around. So it got very, it just got bad. Like, people then started moving out of Lisnelly, and I don't blame them. I definitely do not blame them. And either did my mother and father. But we stayed, and eventually we didn't, because it got just, there wasn't anything against us really. But for example, one time my dad found someone must have thrown away drugs or something, because he found it. He had a shed at the back garden, and he found drugs, and my dad went ballistic, and so did my mum, and we confronted next door about it. I don't really remember what they said about it, but yeah, I could have found it, and a young child about 9 or 10 or whatever, thinking that it's sweets, and eat it, they die. Things like that do happen, and it's a horrible thing to happen. But yeah, I find that despicable, and it probably was one of the thoughts in my mother's head when she was thinking about leaving. The part about leaving, well, my mother was more determined to leave than my father. My father doesn't like change. You see, what I'll explain later is about autism, so it won't come up until I explain to when I'm about 17, or sorry, just about 18. But yeah, whether or not my dad is autistic, he does not like change. He hates it. Like, for example, he's lived in the flat he's in now for 22 years, it will be this year. And nothing's wrong with that. But he's wanting to move a little each year he's lived there since, and but in the last 5 years. So he can't pull the trigger on that. He can't make that first move because he doesn't like change, even though he wants now to move. He doesn't know where to move. So he's not making that step because he worries about the change, even though he wouldn't admit it. Sometimes he does in little amounts, but overall he doesn't admit it. Not to me anyway, but maybe to himself. But the reason this is relevant is because like, both parents accepted that the the park was terrible at that point. Many people that were there originally had left, and by that point, my mother and father and me were living there 11 years. But it changed dramatically, And I did 6 years of school in Christ the King. So it was summer. I don't know if it was planned to move when I finished that year at school, but we did move in the summer. So I was on my summer holidays from school, but we got a new place in a town 10 miles away called Newtown Stewart, but we all call it Newton, just their way of our accents. So Newton Stewart. But my mother was fine to go, but my dad not being coping with it, not coping with the change and worrying about the change. He he caused arguments because he couldn't express his feelings or whatever. So, it was the beginning of his mental breakdown, is what I'll call it. I seen it firsthand. I seen it with my own eyes. So this was 2001, and 2001 was a horrible year in terms of family life. So when we moved, I believe my dad didn't move with us straight away. I don't know what the arrangement was. They were still together, but my dad still had a major problem with living in Newton Stewart, and he already had a flat, a different one than he has now. But so he was able to live there in the meantime. But he did come down and live, and I was delighted to see him and things. However, from around the time we moved there, around June until December, early December, that was a horrible time because that was the beginning of the breakup, of my mother and father's breakup. I'm not going to go into depressive points like I mentioned, but I'll just touch on a few things about it. So my dad did eventually move in with us, but because he couldn't really cope with the change, he found things that he didn't like about it, and he got into this depression. He would sleep a lot. He would cause arguments. He would be paranoid about things. If my uncle came up and decorated, he would cause arguments with Mark, my uncle, my mother's brother. So it was a very dark period, and yeah, I don't really want to go into the darkest periods. As I said, I wanted it to be more light-hearted, but yeah, it just kept going downhill and downhill, and it was a mental breakdown until early December, where my uncle, Mark's brother, basically said, like, you better leave here, because he was an actual physical threat to my mother at this point, and basically he had to leave. It was getting really scary for my mum, and I was scarred mentally by all of this chaos. So I don't mind talking about it, but yeah, it just hurts thinking about it. But I remember, yeah, him leaving, and that was their kind of breakup the final time, especially during Christmas. That was a very lonely period. Me and my mother, at Christmas, and my mother was alone, and I was still very in a confused way and still scarred, and but it was the beginning of recovery. So there was positivity to it, and my dad recovered. It took him years and years, It took him probably around 10 years to fully recover. And these days, he's taking medication to deal with his anxiety and depression. And it's really working. He's come leaps and bounds just like I have. He's made super amounts of progress. And that's why my mother, for example, she doesn't mind at all being in the same room. You know, like they were when they came up on Friday. They don't they don't mind being in the same room. So that's solved now. But they're not together, and they haven't been since they tried in 2002 to kind of rekindle things to kind of see, for me it was basically for me, but yeah, it didn't work out. And yeah, at school I had to change school obviously if I moved. So primary seven was in a school called St. Patrick's Primary School, and oh, that was the worst year of school of my life because I was all alone. Everybody in the class knew each other because they were in the same. It's a smaller town, Newton Stewart, from Oma, and Newton Stewart's small, so all of the school kids in every year knew each other. So I was a strange face, and I also was an introvert, so I was more anxious. And yeah, it turned, it was I didn't make any friends. I was bullied, to a certain extent, not extensively, but I was teased, and I called names, and I didn't fit in really. A lot of it was because I couldn't feel like fitting in. So it's not like they never give me a chance or anything, but uh, yeah, the worst culprit was my teacher. Uh, I just had a bad time with that teacher. Um, he basically said nasty things, not all the time, but the once was like him saying that I should be in a mental institution or something because I said that I wasn't laughing at anything when I actually made a friend called Dean, and he was actually new in the school a few months after I came into the school, and I was delighted, a new pupil. So me and him did become good friends, and we were friends for a few years. So that was cool. That was great. Uh, but uh, yeah, me and him were laughing at something, at this kind of recording that we had to write down answers that was being asked in the audio recording. But me and my friend Dean were laughing at the recording, and the teacher asked us, "What are we laughing at?" And I said nothing because that's what I'm gonna do, as a kid, and that's what he said about being in a straitjacket, being in a mental institution, and it's not like it was all fun and games and everything every other time. Like, perhaps I misunderstood a large part of his personality, but so for example, who knows if I could get along with the man now if I met him for a cup of coffee to talk, but there's no way that his personality is going to make children like him. So he's a teacher. He has to come at least. He doesn't have to be a tyrant. But he doesn't have to be a buddy. But still, he has to be someone respected, someone that doesn't need to be liked, but they don't want to be hated. And he was hated, not just by me. So, yeah, that was a crappy year of school, but it was my last at primary school, so at least it was only 1 year. Uh, so I wanted to stay on the Christ the King, but I was 10 miles away from Oma, so I couldn't go there. But So 2002, I ended my primary school year, and then after that summer, I I get the kind of scary feeling when I talk about this is when I started my very first day at high school. So my very first day of high school, I got lost, and because I'm such an introvert and scared and things like that, I was following someone that was in my primary school because I felt comfortable being with him, even though he wasn't my friend or anything. I just felt okay. I will hang around with him, and he seems okay with me hanging around. But even they said, "You're not in this class," because we were kind of in temporary classes for a couple of days, so we could be then kind of sectioned into not sectioned, but kind of categorized into like the top classes to the bottom. So it's like the bottom classes would get a lot more assistance because maybe some of them would be the slowest learners. So 8A8 means the A means nothing, but eight means the first eight means the grade, and the more the numbers, the lower the grade. So eight means the lowest class. Uh, no, sorry. The first number is the year you're in, and as I had 7 years of primary school, this is now my eighth year in school. So it was eight. So 8A, and then the next year 9A, and then the next year 10A, all the way up to 12A. Like I didn't stay on in school after that, but some people did until they were 14A something. But so the eight, the 8A8 then means you're in the lowest. So I was in 8A3, so the third top class. So I was decent enough. And yeah, I did manage to find my way to the right class that day, by the way. But yeah, my mother couldn't really see me go to school one of my first days at high school because she had an operation on one of her ears because she had a lot of problems growing up, and she got operation on her ear to solve it, and then on the next year sometime later. But yeah, I couldn't see her for a couple of days because she was in hospital, but I still had to go to school. So my aunt lived in Newton Stewart, and I stayed a few days there. But yeah, I in my first year of high school, I have more good memories maybe than bad. It was still very difficult because of my constant introvertness, my shyness and anxiety of making friends because like instead of you just have to assume from here on in I am an awkward person, so like this is post Ritalin, after Ritalin, so I was awkward ever since and still am to a lot of extent, but my first year was okay. After maybe third year or during third year, it got a lot more complicated and things. Like bullying. I was being bullied, never physically, but I found it worse that it was more names about my acne and things, and I wasn't popular, and I didn't care about being popular, but I wanted to fit in a bit, and I did have my friends. I did have three friends, Brian, and Daniel. So two Brians, one with an I and one with a Y, and then Danny. So we got on well for years, for the first three, but the the bad thing was, for our friendship, was that we were in the same classes for 3 years, so we got on well. But after the third year, you have to choose different subjects that you're going to take on for your GCSE, which is basically the kind of the title you're going to get, the grade, the what you're going to be getting a certificate on. So if you're going to pass high school, you're going to get a GCSE grade A to E, A being the best and E being the worst. So for my GCSE, I took tech, so that's technology and design, and that's woodwork basically. I don't know what the technology part is, but it's basically woodwork. Like it'd be my dad's dream, but it's carpentry basically. That's what it should be called. Uh, I took no, I didn't take science. But I still was in science. Uh, but I didn't take double science, which means double work. But you can get an A, whereas with single science you can only get up to a C. What else did I take? I didn't take religion, but it's not because I wasn't interested in religion. I actually just found a lot of the work difficult. So apologies if it seems like I kind of abandoned religion, but it's not. Like if I started asking you deep questions about things you might not know, maybe you do, Eileen, but a lot of things I didn't. Like I still prayed every day, just like I do now, but I had no deep knowledge of the things I was being asked, so I went with an easier option. And again, I apologize if that seems a bad thing, but I guess I have to atone for that. And like in a way, yeah, I'm more interested in learning things now. Way more hunger to learn when I'm 32 than I was at 12. But what was the other subject? Geography. Geography. I chose geography, so even though I didn't do too well in that, but I have a deep interest in it, especially now. But the friend group of Danny and the two Browns and me were kind of halved because ever since when you're 8A3, I was in 9A3, 10A3, 11A3, and 12A3. And so were everybody else that was in the third group. So you stay that number for the rest of your school days, career, whatever you want to call it. And if you stay 2 extra years, you're 13A3 and 14A3. I didn't take those 2 years. You'll know why, but it's a better thing for me rather than stay on school. But the reason I didn't stay on at school is because as I said, when third year started, it was still okay. I still had my friend group, but it just got progressively worse and worse as the year went on. And then the fourth year started, and I had fourth year and fifth year, the last 2 years I had school. Unfortunately, those were the worst because the bullying ramped up really high, and my friend group was basically cut down the middle in a sense because my friends chose different subjects. Not all of them chose different subjects and things. I would have different subjects throughout the day. I could have science and maths or double maths and such, but like the subjects that you could choose, for example, like geography and single science, it clashes. If I was to see my friend, it would clash because if I had geography, my friend would have music because one of my friends was a drummer, so he had music when I had geography. So that was the Brian with the Y. and maybe my other friend, I can't remember, like he was doing another class, or maybe he could have done the same class, like double science. So I would only see my friend group uh, kind of every half a day rather than being all together for the whole day. So that, what I say, broke my heart a bit. Unfortunately, I didn't take a lot of the chances socially. What I mean by that is, like, when I was asked, this is the best way to explain it. When I was asked to go to a kind of school disco, all it really means is a get together with a bit of food uh, at a place called Kappa. It's like a sports team, like an Irish sports team kind of area, a hall, and that's just a get together. Like, it's after school. Like, so it's nothing to do with the school at all. So it's a thing where people go every, I think it was Friday, so it's the weekend, and it's basically the go-to place for like the cool ones that wanted to socialize. And I didn't ever go once, not once, but I should have, because the more I didn't go, the further away I got from my friends, and also because of the different subjects. Unfortunately, the group kind of didn't separate really, but it fizzled out, and so maybe I would be friends with Danny, but I wouldn't have me, Danny, Brian, and Brian in the same class, apart from a couple of classes a week, and that it was never the same. Um, a major part of the bullying, for example, was a guy called Dermot. I don't really, like, it's kind of pointless talking about him, but he was just bullying me because he bullied other people. Like, and it made me feel so uncomfortable. But I did stand up for myself a few times. Like, not physically, but just telling him off. But then I kind of didn't. If it was now, I would be able to not physically attack him as well. He could probably beat me in a fight easily, but I could still speak my mind. I wouldn't shy away from speaking my mind, basically. So uh, I've grown up in that way. But so Dermot uh, was a major reason. There was a few other kind of bullying me or joining in with Dermot, his friends, and others just kind of not being nice. So that's not necessarily bullying, but it's still not pleasant. So like, school just became such a pain for me, such a pain. And I also made a friend. So when we changed subjects in third year, I can't remember when specifically for some reason, but I remember then getting a friend called Paul. He was in my form class. The form class means the A3. So, like, there's 8 form classes for each year, and I was an like A3, and that's my form class, and that's just the class that you're associated with, and like, you're going to take the same subjects until third year, like I just explained. But Dean was in my form class for the whole length, the whole journey of school, but uh, I didn't really get to know him until third year, and we bonded over video games, and we were outcasts as well. He was also bullied, and we uh, we both had a kind of burning hatred for a while at just the way of being bullied. But so it was just a bit of moral support between us. And it was a bit weird, to be fair, but so was I. Like he would have this type of humor, and I wouldn't get some of it. Like sometimes I felt that he was kind of messing around with me, but like I feel that he wouldn't be my friend if that wasn't the case. So I have more positive memories with Paul than I do negative. Like we did eventually not fall out, but just drift away. But this was when I was uh, at college. So when you end the school, like you could take an extra 2 years at school and or do whatever you want. You could just not do school or go to college. I went to college, by the way. Um, but and so did Paul, but he done a completely different subject than I would have. So like it was completely two different areas, and because there's so many different subjects at college, it would be like a shot in the dark that you would be in the same class as someone that unless you talk to them beforehand. But yeah, that's pretty much my school journey, really. Sorry if that part's a bit boring, but yeah, it's just a big part of my growing up, and it explains a few things about me. Like I had friends. Uh, Sometimes I fell out with them, and then sometimes some friends eventually just turned on me. Like it happens to people, of course, not just me, but uh, it was difficult. Uh, and that school was called Sacred Heart College, even though it's high school. It's still called Sacred Heart College. Uh, so yeah, I finished school and started that it's Technical College, but everyone calls it tech. It is basically college. It's not university. It is just a step below university. So if you have, let's just say, primary school, then high school, and then college, and then university at the top. Uh, so when I was about 15, I started really getting into American football. I don't know if you've ever seen American football. I'm happy to show you examples and you might understand. If you don't, like maybe you don't, or maybe you do, let me know. I got extremely into it and I was determined, thinking that I'm going to be a part of the sport. So I actually took, even though I was the least sporty person, well, I did like some sports, but I hated playing them because I was so bad. Like I don't mind playing it, even bad, if it wasn't around people that would have mocked me. So if I played uh, football and I played badly, I'd feel terrible. Just like kids at that age do about the smallest thing, but then you get picked on, and then it just ruins a lot of your morale. But because like it was the worst thing I could have done, because I took sports studies and my intention was to eventually go to university where they have, even in Ireland, they have universities that have American football teams and they play other teams around Ireland and England as well, and Scotland and Wales. But a part of that course, even though I should have thought this beforehand, and I didn't for some reason. But you had to play sports, including football, and I just kind of uh, didn't bother, even though I don't know if it was actually like mandatory. It was a perk of the like of the class itself. Like it's like if you loved using computers, and you had done a computer class, then using the computers would be great. Because that the school or the college would know that that's what they want to do. But because I didn't like playing the sport, I only liked American football, and we didn't play that. And I was so eager to set something up to play it, or because I wanted to be a coach. And even though I went the wrong way about it, overall, if I got enough guidance and I didn't have like anxiety and depression and like social problems, I could have, like I'm smart enough and I had the dedication, but there were so many things like happening that nah, it didn't work out, of course, and it was a bad decision taking tech, uh, or sorry, taking sports studies in tech because a year and a half into it, I I dropped out. Yeah, I was an adult at that point. I turned 18 on the 14th of July 2008, and I had a few arguments with my mother, but she wanted to be, like it wasn't that she wanted to be a tyrant and she wanted to be bad. She wanted me to, like first of all, she gets extra money benefits for me staying in school, so that would have been taken away. So she was worried about that aspect, and also she was also considering my future, and I was in a sense throwing it away. But I wasn't happy there, and yeah, like it was the right decision to axe it all together. In that year and a half, I did not have a really good time. I didn't really get along with the people there. I did make a couple of friends, but it wasn't like strong enough to keep me there. And I was out of place. I was a fish out of water, and I needed a change. So that's 18. So I'm 18 now in the story. Um, so I'll tell a bit more, and then I will. I'm just looking at how long I've been talking. You're probably a bit annoyed that I didn't message back, but I did tell you that it could be a long time. But because I'm so chatty at the moment, I could explain a good amount right now, and you will, you'll be happy that this is already an hour and 18 minutes long. So there's still plenty more to go. But this will be just one part, because I'm not going to separate it. But for each recording, I will. But I will go on for a few more minutes to maybe explain until 2012, maybe. So right now, where we are is 2008, and I had a bit of a breakdown because I didn't feel right. I, I get it was just, like, as I said, I'm not going to talk about the bad parts, but I was depressed. I didn't have a good way of solving it, and it was my breakdown. However, the only thing I did in my breakdown really was shut myself away. A big part of it was not feeling that I wanted to go to Sacred, or sorry, that's Sacred, Sacred Heart. I didn't want to go there either, but after a while, I didn't want to go to college. So even though I still did, it just made me depressed, and I regretted my decision, so it made me more depressed. And I didn't have a good time. Um, but after a while, a big part of the kind of the switch around was December of 2008, because uh, me and my mother, like, we had a good chat and stuff, and even though things were good between us, uh, she was surprised that I wanted to kind of live on my own place. Now, it wasn't that I was running away from her or her kicking me out or pressuring me to go or anything like that. This was solely about me wanting to make a change, a positive change. And I believe that was a very good decision. And ever since, I've lived on my own this way. And I want to live on my own until we live together, babe. So, for example, I never want to go back living with my mother, even though I love my mother. I just to go back would be a big step backwards because I like my own space. I like doing my own thing, and the whole place not being myself, the way I decorated, the way I wanted to be. You know, it's I wanted to be my own, and my dad moved out when he was 19. I moved out when I was 18. He survived. I survived. And if I moved out now, for example, like some people are still living with their parents over in the West, that, it's not that because their finances or something, it's that they're doing it because they find it so easy. Everything's done by their parents. So it's nothing to do with like people are living with their parents because it's so expensive. Like I'm not talking about those people. Like so it's like too expensive for them to move. Not like that. This one is about like too expensive, or sorry, not the expenses, but more to do with getting things done for them and them not being independent. And I have now had 14 years of that now. I moved into my first place a month after me and my mother had that decision of me to move in January 2009. And that was a place in Derry. Sorry, I don't know. I don't remember if I mentioned in the story, but in 2005, there was a few things I missed out. First of all, in 2004, in the summer, my mother, after 3 years of being separated from my dad, she met Vincent, and I was scared but very excited at the fact that my mother met someone else. I was scared just at meeting this person, but overall, I was super excited. And yeah, I had every right to be. They've been together ever since. It'll be 19 years they're together this year. They're happily married. No kids. Like my mother hasn't had any more kids. She did try, but unfortunately, she had a miscarriage. Sorry to bring like the mood down a bit, but yeah, like I was devastated. That was 2008. Because it would have been lovely to have a brother or sister, like someone for company and someone to kind of pal about with. Just not meant to be, but my mother is extremely happy. Like, do I or would I have ever wanted my parents to get back? No, because even though I love both of them equally, I still don't want them to get back together because they're not in love, for example, but also like they're two now for the last they've been separated now for 23 years, and like so it's a big long time to be separated, so they've changed in certain ways as well. So they're different people, so they would never match. Like they matched then back in 1980 something, and then I was born in 1990. And like she would have probably broken up with my dad a few years before I was, or before, sorry, his breakdown, maybe a couple of years, or maybe not. She would have broke up, but if she would have broken up a little sooner if she didn't have a son. But yeah, it's better off my parents being not together. Put it this way, and not that any of them want to be. It's been 23 years. We've all moved on. We've all grown up, and that part's in the past. Um, and Vincent has been the future. She's been with Vincent almost double the time she's been with my dad, or she was with my dad. So that says a lot, to be together double the amount of time she was with my dad. So I'm very happy for my mother, and I made a good speech for her at her wedding. So sorry, my throat's getting dry, but I will drink a bit of water in a few minutes. What else? What I was going to talk about? Sorry. Yeah. When I was 11, I didn't have any brothers, sisters, of course. But one family member I did really get along with. Now, I had a few cousins that I did get along with before that, Liam and Sean, but they were older, and Liam was like 4 years older, but he was still cool, and he was still, palling about with me. He's a very nice person. And Sean, they kind of just, it kind of drifted to their own kind of social groups eventually. So it wasn't anything bad. It was just one of those things. They would still have loved to meet me and stuff like that, but it just got less and less after I was like 10 or 11. But I started seeing my second cousin, Con, as it's short for Cornelius or Corny, but because his name is after his uncle. Yeah, yeah, his name is after his uncle, and no, sorry, I think it's his great uncle. So it would be Con's parent chose Con's name because Con's parent had a uncle called Con. I think that's what it is. I think that's what it is. But me and Con, we were very much the same. We loved video games. We weren't popular at school. We each had our own kind of backward ways, but we were very alike. We, as I said, loved video games, so we met up, like I think it was every 2 weeks or so, and one time he would come up to me, and then the next time I would go down to his to stay a couple of nights, and that was the weekend, and I loved it. Me and Con got on very well, and like anything else, even though it wasn't planned, we kind of drifted apart a bit because of my depression. I didn't see Con as much when I actually moved to the same town as Con. So it's more my fault than anything. And Con would have been too awkward to kind of initiate that kind of conversation to begin with. So I put most of the blame towards me, that me and Con aren't close. But we did message online from 2010 onwards. Like he would be on the same PlayStation Network account, and I would message him through that, and then like through Facebook and stuff. And we also done that like way back in a social network called Bebo, like way back, and yeah, like me and him got on very well, and like, me and him were like brothers. He does have a brother, in fact, but I consider Con to be the closest thing I've ever had to a brother, and I would tell him that. I've never told them it before, as I said, because we're both awkward. But yeah, if I seen him today, I would say to him, Con, you know what? Those days we were like brothers. I love them and I cherish them and I think about them a lot. And they were a lot of fun. It was sometimes the bright spots of my week. Things like that. It's corny, it's cringe, but it's true. um, so the place I lived in on my own, the first place was a flat in Derry, an apartment. And it was good. But I wanted something more permanent. So the way it works here is housing executive, which means you have to be on a waiting list. And let's just say once you're uh, offered a house, if you don't take the house, you are put back on the list, probably way back down the bottom. But if you accept it, that's yours. You can live there for the rest of your life. No one can just move you out unless you do something extremely bad, like tear the walls down or something. So it's not like you own it, but you mostly own it. So it's like if you pay for a house completely, that's yours. But with housing executive, you you haven't paid a ton of money. You don't pay like thousands of pounds, tens of thousands. You just pay a small deposit like you do when you move into a private accommodation. So 2009 to early 2010, I lived in that flat in Derry, and in the place I lived in 2010, it was back in Oma. So I was back in Oma for the first time in 5 years, and from 2010, actually when I lived in 2010, I was in the same park as Paul. So me and Paul actually kind of started our friendship again. He would come up to my flat. He still lived with his mother, and I've seen their house and stuff a few times when I was friends with Dean. But like, so we had a bit of friendship when I was in that place in Oma from 2010 to 2011, because the place I was living in, I kind of should have done more research because it wasn't a very nice area. It wasn't that anything bad was going on, but I left at a good time because there was a lot of basically terrorist activity being formed there. Not that there was explosions or anything, but there actually was a garage that was raided, and there was like explosives, and I know where that would be, like where that exact garage would be, and it would be literally 30 seconds if you walked out the door of the flat. Or sorry, if you walked out the door of, like not the flat, but the building leading to the flat, it would take 30 seconds to get to that garage. So, yeah, unsafe area. So, I moved to Derry again, and I lived there until I was 28, or just about 28. And yeah, I know I'm skipping forward a good bit, but a lot of things didn't really happen. Like I didn't work because I had depression and things. I was on disability benefits, and the way it works over here, if you're on disability benefits, you're on, like you're on easy street. You know, they're going to really take care of you by giving you enough finances to live on, and yes, it is laziness. I have formed a lot of laziness, but I'm trying to dig myself out of that hole. But being on like benefits and things like that there kind of really helped me. Uh, but also it's too easy in a way. Like you want that challenge, and now with the help of Osmond, he's motivated me to start thinking about getting a job, a proper job where I can earn even more money and build a life for myself. And because of you now, babe, I have more motivation than ever to start a hunt to get a job. I don't expect anything spectacular, but I know that I have the mental capacity and the determination and also the intelligence to really, really go at a job, a career, something that I'm interested in. So I can really, really go for it. So in terms of career wise, we can talk about that another time. But yeah, being on benefits helped me, and that's what I've been living on ever since. You hopefully don't think less. You're such a nice person, you wouldn't, but I just feel like it's like I'm getting money for nothing. However, it's the best way, for example, because if I started a job now at the very low wages, you would be getting less than you would with benefits. So why work? So it's the opposite of what it should be because you work, but you'd be making less money than if you stayed on benefits. So I hope that kind of clears things up a bit because I did touch on it before, but I didn't explain it maybe as much as I do now. But yeah, just to explain quickly, maybe half of my autism, but in 2008, just a month before I turned 18, the Child and Adolescent Service, Rivendell, were telling me, like I mentioned, that they're ending their services with me. And they, at that time, diagnosed me with autism. And at that point, we knew nothing about it because all it says, on the thing was autism spectrum disorder. So we didn't know much. And because Rivendell didn't really guide me about what to do next, the autism part wasn't really explored because I was unaware of it. So I knew the autism part, but I didn't know what it was and to get help if there was, or to understand at least myself. But nowadays I have known myself a lot more. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. I think there might be a few others, but I have to think about the autism part itself. And I can't think if there's anything to add about that. But it's like, yeah, I've talked about the autism part of me before, and yeah, it was only until 2008 where I was diagnosed. You're born with it, basically. So, like, it's nothing like you develop. It's what you're born with, and when your brain develops naturally, you show signs of autism very early, like with making eye contact and things like that. So a lot of those things I have to do from scratch. Like making eye contact is difficult for me, but with a ton of effort, I have made tons of strides towards, like towards being more sociable, towards making my life a lot smoother, a lot easier, a lot better. Just by making effort bit by bit for the last 25 years, ever since I knew that I had these kind of problems, bit by bit, and since I knew about the autism part, and then until I actually learnt what it was, after way after 2008, then I really understood myself a lot more. Um, Also, the weird thing is, yesterday I got the phone call about the scan results, and what she mentioned in the scan results was the only thing that they saw wasn't bad, so don't worry. I said that to my mother to not worry. So it's nothing bad. It's nothing like a tumor or anything like that. They see nothing like that. So I repeat, they saw nothing bad, but what they did find was something they call an anatomical quirk, and she explained it as it your brain looks a little, like she was saying, my brain looks a little different in certain parts than the average person would, and so basically, my brain isn't the norm, and I said to my mother, and I honestly do think this until some specialist tells me otherwise, that I believe that this is why I have autism. I honestly feel like that because the physical makeup of my brain, the way God has made me, like those kind of things about my brain, those are probably the reasons that I have a large smartness, intelligence for things, and dumb with others, and the fact that I have autism. So it'd be interesting to know that. That's my theory. I'm not an expert. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a neurologist, so I can't exactly confirm it. But it's something I thought yesterday, so I wanted to tell you that part, especially when I was talking about autism and the kind of history about it. But it's pretty short. It's me knowing about it and then not knowing for 8 years, 7 years, and then only then finding out more about it. But I'm going to take a little break, babe. I'm going to tell you about this video, so sorry for taking so long, but at least I made the part and I'm going to start uploading it. It's going to take a while. So as soon as this is uploaded, you can watch it straight away. So you'll, you'll have seen this all by the time you know this, but I hope you enjoyed this part, and there is probably the other half. There is the other half left to watch. So I haven't done that yet, but I will in maybe an hour in a bit. Probably not as long as this, but uh, there is still a good amount of video left to make. I love talking to you, babe. I want a voice. I keep calling voice call. I want a video call later, babe. Maybe mid-afternoon. After all this talking, sometimes I just don't feel up to talking really. Uh, it's nothing to do with like you or my mother or anybody else. I explain, I just don't want to talk at times. It's just my feeling that the messaging is how I find it most easy to contact people, because I'm autistic. I find it, and I have found it difficult to communicate. Talking, so phone calls, video calls. So I find messaging easier because there is that kind of barrier of just text blocks being sent. But it doesn't mean that I'm saying let's have less video calls. I don't want you to video call. Don't think like that, please. If I didn't love you, I wouldn't be making any video calls. So I have. I know it doesn't seem like it, but I have, tried my best to want as many video calls as possible. Sometimes it's laziness, but most of the time it's just because I want to talk to you by messenger. However, I do love them making these videos, so it's like there's a bit of like, it is to do with probably thinking of what to talk about. Whereas if I have a topic to talk about, like right now, like my life story, then I can talk about it straight away. But yeah, I keep babbling on, but I just kept going, I suppose. I was going to talk about all of this anyway, so I am glad that I got a huge